みんな、見ていてくれ!
If you had to explain what the Fire Emblem franchise is to a friend of yours, how would that conversation go down? I imagine a few of you guys would try and break down the magnificence and strategy that comes from playing Fire Emblem. The politics, the stories, the character arcs, all of it, and how it comes together. But for myself, explaining what Fire Emblem is to a friend was rather simple. You know Marth from Super Smash Bros? It's his game. These 10 words were enough to intrigue my buddies as they loved the fluid playstyle that Marth brought to the table. Hitting someone with the tip of the sword, spacing correctly, it was different from what the other characters could provide. And from the good memories that they've associated from playing Marth in Smash, they would be attentive as I further explain what Fire Emblem is. This, to me, is an indication of how iconic Marth has become. I just have to say 10 words and people immediately understand. And so as people venture deeper into his character, they become mesmerized by how great of a leader Marth is to his people. And really, that's no different from his many appearances and depictions in Fire Emblem Cipher. Being the first ever lord to grace Fire Emblem, Marth was blessed with the touch of many talented artists. Artists like Maki Hakoda, Kida Senri, Yusuke Kazaki, and even Fire Emblem 12's official artist, Daisuke Izuka, and many, many more. But with the many depictions of Marth, my personal favorite is the 25th anniversary card drawn by Mayo, depicting Marth and his many allies. Right off the bat, Mayo's art style is striking, recognizable due to her style and mastery over thin lines and the use of highlights. She's not afraid to wash her color palette with white, and that, in turn, creates some of the most beautiful pieces we see today in Fire Emblem. And even while characters are still, the use of movement and detail within the character's hair makes whoever is in the frame seem alive. This Marth is no different. So when we go and analyze this piece, the first thing we would probably notice is that Marth is in the very forefront. This Marth is determined from what you could see in his expression. He steeled his resolve in ending the War of Shadows. Without words, you can tell that he's promised his allies that he'll keep them alive, and anything but that would be a failure as the Crown Prince. Just off of his expression, you can tell what kind of character Marth is. He'll use whatever tools and strength that his allies can provide for him, and use that in turn to protect his nation and his people for peace. The next big detail that we would perhaps notice about Marth is what's in his right hand, the legendary blade, Falchion. The Falchion in this composition is ahead of Marth, perhaps intentionally, and in conjunction with his left hand held over his chest, his body posture shows of a Marth that wants to avoid violence but is forced to fight. Overall, there are a lot of small details in this piece that captures the many faces of our very first Fire Emblem Lord. Moving past Marth, we see Marth's allies, all notable for the role that they play in the War of Shadows and future Fire Emblem character archetypes. Starting at the bottom left, we see young Tiki, Shida, Ogma, Navarre, Kain, and Abel, all to the left side. And on the right, we see Lind, Merrick, Gordon, Drog, and Jagan filling up the right. Besides being characters that all help move the plot forward and being fan favorites due to how early most of these units appear, all these characters here go on and create their own archetype, for the better or for the worst. And finally, moving on into the background displays a giant shield and sword, a staple imagery that happens in the Arcaneo series as the Falchion and the Shield of Seals go hand in hand. There's also a ray of light that shines on top of Marth and oddly enough obscures the background in a weird way. We don't know where the light is stemming from, but it comes down right on top of Marth, indicating yes, Marth is the chosen hero that will become the Hero King, the very same king that inspires a fell future. Another weird detail that I've picked up on, and it might not even be intentional, is that this piece oddly reminds me of the original Fire Emblem trailer, where Marth is standing center and the people around him would sing the Fire Emblem theme song. This might just be coincidence, but I felt as though the similarities were present enough to warrant a small comment about it. This piece, detail-wise, has a lot to digest and break down, but one thing that really goes under the radar is how Mayo engineered this piece and its composition. There's an invisible guideline that goes throughout this piece, and her style really aids in this process. Most of us, when looking at this piece, will first see Marth, then his allies surrounding him in a dimmer light, and then finally the background obscured by the ray of light. Once we see the ray of light shining down on Marth, our eyes are guided back to the Hero King and the cycle repeats itself. Our eyes are continuously going through a cycle, and every time we do, we end up finding things that we may not have seen before. This piece, all in all, just captures what I think Marth is best at. Getting together people to rally behind him and believe in his cause. And this idea, this theme, is what I believe makes Fire Emblem such an interesting game. It's not about us following the main character, but us seeing through the story of multiple people and how they came to rally behind the Lord. And that's why Mayo's depiction of Marth is my favorite. This has been JaeAIK. Thanks for watching.